Judging by the typical holiday playlist, an alien might reasonably conclude that humans stopped trying to record great Christmas music about 50 years ago. As nice and nostalgic as it is to listen to the same old recordings year after year, it's also nice on the rare occasion that something measures up to the likes of Bing Crosby or Elvis or Vince Guaraldi to add something new to the holiday soundtrack. Toward that end, I'd like to throw out two suggestions, one old and I think underappreciated, another contemporary but also not exactly mainstream, both of which were actually re-released in new editions last year. Now, I personally am secular, but I do really appreciate the reverent spirit that comes across in a lot of religiously inspired Christmas music, none more so perhaps than Lauren Daigle's album Behold. I think it's one of the best modern Christmas albums, maybe one of the best Christmas albums ever, not only for its moments of solemn admiration, but also for the just buoyant sense of life and sweetness that comes through in every track. Daigle is from Lake Charles, Louisiana, and her New Orleans jazz roots come through from the album's very first notes. This clarinet pickup leading into one of the most pulsing renditions of Jingle Bells perhaps ever recorded. Piano and horn fills skate briskly over this just absolutely massive sounding upright bass, and Daigle's perfectly harmonized vocals give way to horn solos that honestly I think would make even a Louis Armstrong smile with delight. This level of syncopated complexity is possible only when musical masters play live together in the studio, listening deeply to one another and responding with studied spontaneity. This is a magic ingredient of the old school recording approach that made the Christmas classics so great, but it's one that is less and less common as more and more albums are recorded in bedrooms on laptops, one track at a time. And that magic continues throughout Behold, even on quieter tracks like Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, which is so relaxed that you can practically hear a fire crackling in the sound of brushes sliding across the snare. Daigle's voice is liquid caramel on What Child Is This, drizzled over a chunky rhythm section, frosted with a just gorgeous Louis Prima style trumpet solo with expressive voice-like muting. And like her take on Jingle Bells, her version of White Christmas has to be one of the funkiest moments in holiday music. It opens with this bass figure counterpointed by horns, and Daigle's vocal just glistens between dustings of twinkling piano. During the solo section, the horns erupt together into this gloriously tangled dance of melding melodies. For those who have to have their Christmas music as secular as their morning coffee, I think there are still plenty of tracks here to work into your playlists. But if you want something you can put on from beginning to end, then instrumental music is a better bet, and you're in luck. In 2019, Real Gone Music released an album that, for the first time ever, brought together all of the Christmas recordings from Mr. Guitar himself, Chet Atkins. And in 2023, Sony re-released that album and made it available for streaming and download. Winter Walkin', the complete RCA Victor and Columbia Christmas recordings. Winter Walkin' combines Chet's classic 1961 album, Christmas with Chet Atkins, along with his 1976 re-recordings of many of the same songs, plus his 1983 East Tennessee Christmas, and a slew of other holiday tracks that originally appeared only on various compilations. It's the ultimate Christmas collection from the Country Gentleman. Although Chet Atkins may no longer be a household name, he's easily one of the most talented guitar players in history. Along with Merle Travis, he pioneered this finger-picking style that enabled him to play both melody and rhythm at the same time, much like piano players do. In fact, he could even play two different songs at the same time. It would take at least two lesser players to accomplish what Chet does alone on, for instance, Christmas Carols, which is a medley of classics arranged for solo guitar. Many who do know of Chet tend to think of him as a purely country musician, which is actually the subject of some fun banter between him and Mark Knopfler on the track There'll Be Some Changes Made from their 1990 album Neck and Neck. While a producer and manager at RCA, Chet helped to pioneer the pop-wise Nashville sound that launched many country artists to mainstream success. But his rockabilly take on Jingle Bells here shows why he was influential far beyond country music. His clean, buttoned-up, almost hi-fi sound might seem worlds away from the raucous, distorted guitars that would later come with rock and roll. But Mr. Guitar was nonetheless a major influence on such players as George Harrison, who considered Chet to be the greatest instrumentalist ever, and who even favored Chet's signature country gentleman Gretsch guitar. Not to mention Knopfler, one of the few rock guitarists to play almost exclusively fingerstyle guitar. I remember thinking that his guitar playing was from another planet, that I would never be able to play like that, reflected Knopfler. I still think that, actually. Able to generate so much music with a single instrument, Chet often opted for smaller ensembles that left plenty of room center stage for his guitar. But as a longtime Nashville producer, he was certainly capable of arranging for larger ensembles, including orchestral strings. And listeners get a taste of that here, particularly on Greensleeves. Chet's twangy, hollow body guitar sound, drenched in reverb, sounds particularly plaintive and sweet among strings that well up to take the limelight. Some of the tracks on Winter Walkin' also feature vocals. A cheery child joins in on Sleigh Bells, Reindeer, and Snow, giving his best, cutest attempt at singing in key. The 1976 recordings were, for the most part, almost eerily exact recreations of the 1961 recordings, but made for a different label. The Bells of St. Mary's, however, appears here in two very different versions. Whereas the 1961 version is fairly laid back and features only guitar and bass, the later version really spotlights Chet's country roots. It's way more energetic, apparently recorded after Chet had 3 cups of strong black coffee, and it features fiddle, harmonica, and steel guitar. Predictably, perhaps, the 1983 recordings stand out like a sore thumb. Their more modern, in-your-face production makes everything sound closer, but also less airy and atmospheric and magical. And Chet's brilliance is often buried in large orchestrations that feature cheesy 80s synth sounds and flat, overwrought background vocals. Thankfully, a few more stripped-down tracks spotlight Chet's virtuosity, including a gorgeous rendition of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen and Ave Maria. Whichever era Chet you prefer, it's all here on one 46-track, almost 2-hour collection. The perfect, mostly instrumental accompaniment to your holiday get-togethers. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, that these albums help to make it a little bit better, and, as always, if you want to show me you care, like, subscribe, and share.